everybody. I'm home. I'm here to do a little video on factoring trinomials. I'm Mr. Pearson, and today we are going to look at that, factoring trinomials. Here's a trinomial, x squared minus 3x minus 4. And we're going to be asked to factor this. Now there's numerous things you can do with this. You can actually eventually solve a quadratic equation by factoring. So factoring is somewhat useful if you know how to do it. And we're going to look at the process for factoring. We're going to be given a trinomial. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out what two binomials will multiply together to give us this trinomial. Kind of like if I wanted to do a prime factorization of, say, the number 10. 10 is equal to 2 times 5. Just writing it in a different form. So we're going to take this trinomial and write it into a different form. And the procedure for doing that, it's the opposite of FOIL. And a lot of you have probably heard of FOIL. It's what you get when you multiply two binomials together. It's where you take the first, the outer, the inner, and the last, and multiply the two binomials together. We're going to do the reverse of FOIL to factor, to put this in factored form. Now, here's what we need to do. To start out, every time you're going to start off by making two sets of parentheses, because a binomial times a binomial will give you a trinomial. Now, how do we know what goes inside the binomial? Well, that can be complicated, but what happens is the first term inside each set of parentheses will always multiply together to give you this first term. So in this case, there's only one possibility. X times x. So we put x and x. So we know x times x is going to be x squared. And then from there, the last term in each set of parentheses will always multiply together to give us the last term. So 1 and 4 and 2 and 2 is the only possibilities in numbers that will multiply together to give us 4. In this case, though, we need for it to be negative 4. So how do we make that negative? Well, one of these two numbers is going to have to be negative. So let's say, for example, I tried 1 and 4, and I let 1 be negative and 4 be positive. Now, for this to be correct, it has to multiply out to give us what we started with. So we go to multiply this out using FOIL. Multiply the first one, so we get x squared. X times 4 is going to be plus 4x. Negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. And we combine our like terms, these two middle terms, and we end up with x squared plus 3x minus 4. Well, that's not right. We need for it to multiply out to give us x squared minus 3x minus 4. So we go back and we start this out again. And we go x and x. But in this time, instead of using minus 1 and plus 4, we're going to use plus 1 minus 4. So we multiply this out. X squared minus 4x plus x minus 4. And when I combine like terms, we get x squared minus 3x minus 4, which is what we started with. So this is our correct answer. That's the factored form for the trinomial right there. X plus 1 times x minus 4. Well, as I worked some of these out, I found that it took a lot of time to multiply those out every time. So I came up with something that I like to use. And let's say we have to factor this x squared minus x minus 6. Let's say I was asked to factor this. The directions will say factor. So what do? Well, we start out the same exact way. I make two sets of parentheses. And the first term in each set of parentheses is always going to multiply to give us that first term, which is x. So x times x. Now, what multiplies together to give us negative 6? Well, 1 and 6, 2 and 3. But one of them is going to have to be negative. And I don't think 1 and 6 is going to work. So I'm going to try, by my estimation, I don't think 1 and 6 will work. So I'm going to try 2 and 3. And there's some trial and error involved here, so sometimes we have to kind of try different things. So I'm going to try 2 and 3. And since it needs to be negative x, the larger one's going to be negative. And they have to multiply together to give me negative 6. So one of them is going to be positive, and one of them is going to have to be negative. So I know positive 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So right now I know I'm going to get the first term right and the last term right. But I need to see if I'm going to get that middle term correct. Now if you remember there a minute ago when we did this, multiplied it all the way out using FOIL, collected like terms, and it gets so bogged down. So I came up with a method. Since I know that the first term is going to be right and the last term is going to be right, all I need to do is check the middle term. So I came up for a rule for this, for checking those, and it's called the belly button rule. And where did this rule come from? Well, I made this up. And by belly button rule, I was thinking with belly buttons, there's 2 types. There's outies and innies. So that's what we're going to do to check for this middle term to make this a little quicker to check and see if this factored correctly. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the outies together. And I'll put a little line from there to there. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. And then I multiply the innies together. 2 times x, which is 2x. And I'm going to then combine the outies and the innies, my 2 belly buttons. And I get 2x minus 3x is minus x, which means I get the middle term right. And I already know that I'm going to get the first term and the last term correct. So then that will be my answer. And that will be how I can factor that. So let's look at one more. And let's say x squared plus 4x minus 5. We're just asked to factor that. So again, just like all the rest of them, we're going to make 2 sets of parentheses. And what goes first? Well, they have to multiply together to give us x squared, so it's going to be x and x. And to get 5 is 1 and 5, but it's got to be negative 5, so one of them's going to have to be negative, one of them's going to have to be positive. So I'm going to put 1 and 5. And since the middle term needs to turn out to be plus 4x, I'm going to let the 5 be positive and the 1 be negative. If it doesn't work out, we'll just switch the signs. So now I'm going to use the belly button rule to check, because I'm going to multiply the outies together. That's 5x. Multiply the innies together. That's negative x. So 5x minus x is plus 4x, which is what we need for that to be. And that is what we will get. So at this time, I'm going to stop this short video. This is my first shot at it. And this one's called the belly button rule. And we'll look at the more complicated ones where the number in front of the square term is something other than 1 on our next video. And then we'll post that. So thank you and have a good day.